Hi, we're live. Welcome to Tuesdays with Kamira. Today we're talking organization and productivity. Our guest, Ann Lyons, is a professional organizer and productivity consultant. She'll be answering questions from those who are watching us live. So if you have any questions, just post them in the comment section and she'll answer them or address any comments you have. If you are not watching us live and are watching a recording, feel free to post any questions or comments, and you can have a dialogue with other people who are also watching a recording. Good morning, Ann. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, glad to be here.
Let's begin with you telling us a little bit about yourself and what a professional organizer and productivity consultant does, especially for students and families.
Okay, sure. So I am a professional organizer, which many of you know from TV shows you've seen, like The Home Edit or Tidying Up with Marie Kondo. And that's a lot of what I do and how I started my business. So residential, small business, tidying, organizing, rearranging, helping people downsize is one aspect of what I do. But in the last couple of years, I've added productivity services to my business because I found that quite often a person's organizational problem was also highly related to time and task management. And so I've become a real student of that and developed a big passion for that productivity aspect of it. And nowhere have I found the most effect than with students. I kind of came to it accidentally working with students on this stuff, but many of the same productivity skills that I work with my clients, who are mostly a lot of overworked moms, work from home moms, trying to do job and family life all at once are a lot of my clients as well. But what I found is that all the skills that help with time management, task management, project management start in school. And as kids get into the high school and college years, if they can learn those skills then and apply it to the academic environment, they'll be able to carry them with them forever. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback on that. And so it's basically the same skills that adults need, but hopefully getting them in there earlier when they can really benefit during their developmental time. So so that's the productivity piece of my business. And again, I've had a couple of talks and interact, and I have a couple student clients now that I help them get set up that way.
Wonderful. So we are talking about tweens and teens, so from 12 to 19. Now, let's say that we're those crazy busy moms that you were talking about, and we just haven't gotten around to helping them be organized. Where do we start, and what are the benefits of optimizing organization skills?
The benefits are endless for all of us. The benefits are less stress. A lot of people always feel like they never have enough time to get the organizing, but it's the organizing that gives you time all the rest of the time. And that's true in a student environment and also just around the house. If you guys have all heard sort of the messaging of, well, if you plan what's for dinner, then cooking every night is easier, right? You don't have to think so hard. The less decision making you have to make on a daily basis, the more your mind is free, the more peaceful you are, and the more room you have to add things. So for kids, that's the same. And whether we're talking about keeping their rooms organized in a way so that they can always find what they need and never have that last minute anxious stress that comes with trying to find something or forgetting a homework assignment or a project that's due tomorrow. I'm sure all of us know that moment of like, oh, heck, I need poster board for tomorrow. Planning ahead, it's an ounce of prevention for all of that stuff. And I find in my life, and when I work with anybody, if I can get them thinking ahead and planning ahead with a little bit of time spent organizing, that the stress level of life goes down significantly. And when the stress goes down, the happiness goes up. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah. I love that. We already have a couple of comments, so we're going to put them up.
Okay.
We have Brianna. She says, LOL, I have lists printed out everywhere on every door. At night, we go through the backpack every night.
Yeah. And, some people find the idea of organizing is like a type A thing, but it's a sanity thing. It's not type A to go through the backpack every night because we all know the backpack accumulates lot of stuff you don't want to find 3 weeks from now.
Yes.
So, but the thing is, if you can create a habit in your child of going through that backpack, things won't get forgotten. Things won't get lost. And they'll, just like when they were little, sometimes I think we start training skills in kindergarten level and we're really ritualistic. Now we go in and now we hang up our coat. And then somewhere along the way, we give up on that. And our teens need it just as much, if they need it more, right? And they're not listening like they were when they were 5, but those habits are going to help them along the way. I have a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I got in a fight with my 15-year-old daughter recently because I said, your roommates are going to hate you when you get to college, because she's lost a lot of that stuff along the way. Yes, I'm a professional at this, and my teenage daughter gives me trouble just like yours. But, just creating the rituals of the backpack, emptying the backpack, going through it, sitting down with, for when we get into the academics, and I don't know how much balance you want with just organizing or productivity skills for teams. I can go in all directions here, but the ritual of emptying your bag at the end of the day or before you go to bed, whatever it is, as well as taking out your planner. And I'm a hardcore evangelist for students in high school and middle school, having college as well, having a paper planner. And I could go on about that for a long time if you'd like. But the ritual of doing that every day and looking at it and thinking, oh, wait, I have a quiz, or I'm going to have this homework from this class tomorrow, but I have a baseball game. You know what I mean? That ritual just puts the individual in the driver's seat, right? So any kind of rituals like that you can create with your kid make a huge difference. And I do that personally. I keep a journal or notebook is how I keep track of what I have to do. And I look at it at the end of my work day. I look at it. And that way, the stuff I wrote down is sort of always in my head, and I'm thinking ahead. And when I'm thinking ahead, so much more gets done, right? Yeah. My kids have a planning time during their school day. And, a lot of the challenge in having that is it's a free period. And the challenge that they have in having that is it's so tempting to just be a social hour, right? And that's not what it's there for. But at the same time, you recognize that high school is a social time, and that's, it's hard to resist. And my argument is that if you know what your homework is or the steps you are going to need to do, you may realize that one of them is a 15-minute task that will put you well ahead, which means you can say, okay, in my free period, I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing this and 30 minutes doing something, doing nothing, right? It's just getting on top of that stuff and teaching kids how to get on ahead of themselves so that they aren't constantly chasing surprises. I think we all know the level of anxiety we feel when there's a sense that we're about to let something drop through the cracks. And our kids do that too, along with all the other social anxiety that they're living with.
So Rihanna has children 7 to 14. She's got all kinds of stuff, a menu board, and got all kinds of ways to organize. So if you're watching this, you should go in the comment section and see her tips, because she's got lists and all kinds of stuff. You mentioned a couple of good things. You mentioned some tools that I want to get to later. You talked about having the paper planner, and I want to talk to you about that because I cannot mind to use that. I've bought them years and years in a row. And tried the electronic things, but we're going to talk about that later. You said that you want kids to get ahead of themselves, to take ownership of their organizing. How do we help them do that? How do we ease them into that so that the organizing is theirs and they appreciate it?
Well, I'll give an example of what I'm going to do. So my son is a freshman, and he, after one day at school, is already like, high school may have too much freedom for me. Like, he's not used to the being in charge of his own day and his own life sort of thing. So I'm going to take this opportunity, sit down with him with the paper planner that I bought him and say, please humor me for this right now. Try this, please, for 1 week. And unfortunately, I've succeeded with his sister on this one. So I have maybe an extra cheerleader. Like, let's take that at the beginning of the year, and you guys this is the perfect moment, right? To at least maybe get the information and see if they can, there's this British expression I love, start as you mean to go on. So if we can get started, maybe we can get it going the way it needs to be. So what I would say is, if you can, they don't want to listen to us, but maybe you can get this. Could you humor me? And then I'll leave you alone kind of approach is what I'm going to do. This is my suggestion. And my kids, I'm like, I know what I'm talking about here. So just try this. But what I would say right now, if your child has a planner or doesn't have a planner, I have one I can recommend, get all that stuff the teachers provide, which I know is largely digital now, but sit with them. Let them get on that Blackboard, whatever the program is, where all that data and information is, or if there's something along the lines of a syllabus for high school or whatever, get all that out together and spread it all out and say, okay, this is this class and it meets at this time. And I can see here that the fall is December 12th and that there's going to be a project somewhere in October. Just write it into that calendar so that it's already in their heads, right? And occasionally they're going to see it in that book. And the teacher's going to talk about it and they're going to give them deadlines along the way. And middle school will get a lot more hand-holding, and then high school will be a little less hand-holding, and in college it's like, good luck, son, you're on your own. And we can help them get to that gradual point of just knowing, hey, this is coming at that time. And then figuring out what other big picture items you can pull into that. Now, no fool, I know how hard it is to get buy-in with your kids. So I would just, make a deal, try this out. Humor me for a week here or 2 weeks. And then if it doesn't work for you, we'll sit down again and say, well, what does work? What doesn't work? Because I have to stress, and you guys all know this, like learning and thinking styles are different for every kid. And so no one tool works best for everybody. The reason I'm an evangelist for the paper planner is that all of us have a brain to pen connection. And there's not really one digital tool that brings everything together for you. Your school website doesn't have soccer practice on it or your cousin's wedding in September. So those things, you're able to synthesize all that together, and just the act of bringing it together solidifies it in your brain. And it's always there. David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done, he says your brain is for thinking, not remembering. It's a great, amazing tool for thinking, not remembering. We don't have to remember everything. And this goes for all the parents out there too. Write everything down or put it in your planner or your app or whatever works for you. So I was going to say, I know you're thinking a lot of your kids are very digital. They're all first-gen technology users. So I try to encourage people, try the paper, and then we'll figure out what works and doesn't work. And if you are determined and hell-bent to use your phone or your computer instead of a planner, then let's make sure we're using a tool that brings it all together. And that you're going to look at that tool every day. Because our digital devices alert us to immediate things. They don't ever let us give us that big picture. So you have to make sure you're setting it up that way.
That's great advice. A couple things I learned. First, this is a great time of year because it's the beginning of the year. Pull everything out. Just, humor me, teen, and pull everything out and let's try to organize it. And also remind them, because we all know this, that the digital stuff, it doesn't look into the future for you. It's immediate, and it's always nice to pull everything together, because one app does not do everything. I know, because in anticipation of this conversation, I started for my high school, I started looking at all these things and trying to figure out which one he would like. And he patted me on the head. He's like, I know you love this stuff, but
it's also
I have
faster to write things down. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just have an aside for our audience, because I don't know if this is looking wonky for them. I am on the edge of that storm we've all seen in the news, and every so often it looks a little wonky for me. So if it looks wonky, just please bear with us. We kind of can't do anything about that. It's just the storm is coming right next to where I am. So I apologize if it does look weird for you. It's probably not your computer. It's probably ours. I have something from Lori. Lori says, hello, Lori. Lori says, I write it all down too. I have to keep my family organized. My guys have learned the value of it too. Yeah.
It's irreplaceable. Sorry. Oh, my dog.
That's okay.
And the other thing about writing it all down is that, Liza, come here, baby. Come here. The other thing about writing it down is that you can get everything in one place. Right. And, and I don't mean to gender stereotype here, but as moms, we are the household manager quite often. And you've read some of the books probably about the emotional weight that we carry, that even though we share responsibilities with our spouses, quite often we're the ones who are thinking 6 steps about the next problem, the next thing, how's this going to work? I know we have this, our brains never really rest on that. So the writing down makes a big difference. But the number one thing for any sort of productivity skills and for any system continuing to work is the regular review. You can create the best notes calendar in the world, but if you don't have a routine to review it and redo it, it'll fall by the wayside. So for me personally, I have a Sunday morning ritual that says Sunday morning I go through all the mail of the week. I look at my whole email, make sure there's nothing I left behind. I look at the calendar for the upcoming week to figure out where my problems are or where the logistics might come into play. And then I make the to-do list from all those things in my notebook. And so on Sunday, I already know how my week's going to go. I already have sort of figured out the structure of things and where things are. And it's Sunday, so I'm in the position to ask my family, hey, talk to my husband, hey, who's driving to this on Tuesday? And by the way, I'm working out of the house that day. And, and I often on Sunday as well find myself with a list of questions for my kids. Have you registered for this thing you were supposed to have, because for me, I bring it all together on Sunday. It gives me an opportunity to talk with them on Sunday. And if you have a Sunday dinner ritual or any time that you do have family dinner, which I can't say enough about, that's another opportunity to sort of show your kids, hey, what's coming up this week? Because they probably haven't given it one thought. You know what I mean? Anybody have a test this week? Anybody have a paper this week? That's instilling this idea of a weekly review. Weekly review is the key to any system for adults or students.
I love that. So I like that because that's our way of modeling for them, right?
Yeah.
When we ask them, and then they'll get into the habit when they're not with us of doing their own weekly review. Your weekly review that you will do on Sunday is something we all want our teens to do. Yes. So we want to be realistic though. If we break them into age categories, you can pick age categories. What are the top skills that we should expect them to have and should be helping them to cultivate?
Ooh, well, I'm not a child psychologist, but I would say at any of these ages, honestly, think about habits and rituals that you can put in place while they're still young. And if that for you is you make your bed before you leave the house, or you check that backpack before you go to bed, or we plan your lunches out on Sunday, any rituals you can create, because when we create habits, and habits and rituals are kind of interchangeable in the way I'm speaking, they become effortless once they're in place, right? We don't work hard at remembering to brush our teeth. We just do because we need to. And anything that you can do, and obviously the younger they are, the more control you have. So if you've got a tween and they're in middle school and they're starting to change classes and all that stuff and get those busier lives, this is a key moment where you can just figure out a habit or a ritual. Habits and rituals, though, introduce one at a time. Figure out which one of these sort of things. You can't throw a whole bunch of new routines on anybody, yourself included. But you can take some time to create one that works, And another little factor about habits is if you want to then add another, anytime you can stack 2 habits together, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So if you have a morning ritual that you like to read when you wake up, but you also want to drink a full glass of water every day, then read and drink your water. Like put them together as a tag team thing, and always look for those opportunities. But so I would say that as a tween, you have this opportunity to create some habit that is key. And what would be the key one would be, I think, this daily and weekly reviews of what's going on, just so they start to learn what big picture thinking about their lives is really like. Hopefully that's in place by the time they're teens, but they're a lot more self-sufficient in the high school years. So for them, I would say is creating a situation where they can share with you what's going on and what their big picture is without telling them so much, but letting them know you're an accountability partner for them. So it's like, I have this and this and this, and well, okay, do you need any help from me on that? You know what I mean? On that, so that in a way they know you're there, but you're not telling them what to do, because everybody has to find their own way. And in high school in particular, kids will figure out how they like to study, how they how they keep track of things. They'll find their own way.
I like that for parents with older teens, be their accountability partner, because it really isn't the time when we should be driving them, but we should, let them know that we're here for them.
Yeah. I mean, it will fail too, because they don't really want to hear what we think. And actually, I had some coaching training as well. And I will say that something I have learned works really well with teens is some of the skills you learn in coaching, which is asking open-ended questions. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about your history test? Mm-hmm. How can I support you? Is there anything I can do to support you in that endeavor, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I do this all the time, even with my husband, if I want to sort of encourage a suggestion, I try to relate it, I try to make it my thing. So like, I've found that writing down really helps me, and I just let go, right? And they can decide if they want to try it. I'm not telling them that what they have to do. I'm saying this helps me. So it never feels team, we all know teams don't like being told what to do or how to do it, or like we're the expert on anything, right? Yeah. So I just relate it to myself and ask those open-ended questions about things I know are probably an issue.
I like that. I hear you. So yeah. We know you like a paper planner. That's your tool of choice. Are there any other tools, especially for the students?
Any other tools for the students? Okay, so the paper planner is key. I think I'm a huge fan of Google Calendar, and I know many, many people are. And I think the sooner they can learn to use a calendar effectively like that, as much as I love my paper planner, I am in no way entirely analog. For me, a calendar on a computer is tremendous. So most of their school calendars can be synced into Google Calendar, and then the family calendar can also be there, and they can click them all on and off. And that again starts to create that idea of big picture thinking and seeing everything. And Google's going to be with us forever, and so they use it already. They're totally familiar with it with Google Classroom and everything like that. And so letting them see how that can affect their lives. Plus, it's on their phones, which they're so much more mobile driven than even laptop driven. So a good understanding of that, I think, is a really good tool. Folders, I have found for especially high schoolers, textbooks and a book for every subject is going by the wayside as they do most of their work on laptops. But as far as another sort of hands-on product, like my kids went off to school this year with a 5-subject notebook, and that's it. And a pocket of folders, right? That's all attached, so that because they don't do that much on paper, in my experience, anymore. And so fewer locations for anything is better, right? So you don't have to remember 5 notebooks, 5 binders, whatever, if you can have a single tool. And so the planner and the 5-subject notebook is what they're carrying around, because you could take those papers out, put them in a folder or a binder later when that chapter's done. But I think less is more in every situation. Plus, they walk around, they don't use lockers as much anymore, so everything's in their backpack and it's less weight.
The locker thing really surprised me. If you're a parent of your oldest is just getting into high school, or actually middle schools have lockers too, but I think they're excited about them in middle school. The high schoolers don't really use their lockers unless they belong to a sport or club where they have equipment that they have to stow. They don't really use their lockers. That surprised me for any number of reasons, and each child has their own reasons. Let's talk about how can students increase productivity? So we've talked a lot about organization. I understand that these two work hand in hand, and we often cross message, but how do we get them to increase productivity?
Well, when you say productivity, do you mean getting their things done, or getting more things done, or managing their time, which are all interconnected? Mm-hmm. Kids and parents alike tend to be time optimists or pessimists. Like, we underestimate how long or how short the time something takes. And I mean, the problem with teens is procrastination. And procrastination often comes from misunderstanding the time required, either overestimating it or underestimating it, right? Yeah. So when I say time optimists, you're like, okay, well, I have 2 hours after school to do my homework. Well, the truth is, soccer practice is at 5. You get home at 3. That's not 2 hours, right? Because you're going to get home and go poop, and then you're going to, eat something, and then it's going to be 3:45, right? And then at 4:30, you have to leave for soccer. So the truth is, you had 45 minutes, right? Yeah. That's time optimism, right? And forgetting all those transition times. Learning to understand that is a key thing. The other thing is understanding how long things take, right? So for math problems, is that 20 minutes? Is that an hour? And if that's the case, then where are you going to put the math versus the reading, right? Learning to understand that, and this is one of those things that you can help them try to get to, is figuring that out. The other thing, and this is tricky because they don't have that much control over their schedules, but this is true for adults as well, is when are they at their best energy, right? So some kids cannot do their work after school. They need a break. Some kids can read a book at 9 o'clock. I cannot. So understanding that and choosing the right appropriate times for when to do certain work. You should do your most challenging work when your energy is at its best. Now, if your kid has a free period like mine, that might be the best time to do the hard thing because it's during the day or whatever. I had a friend whose son had so much sports in the evening that he couldn't get anything done and he was struggling. But then she realized he had always been the first person up in the morning. So he never did his homework till 5 o'clock in the morning. And that suddenly changed everything. So sometimes there's a little bit of out of the box thinking on that when it comes to energy. Understand your child's learning style. And if anyone out there has a child with like executive functioning or ADHD situations, there's all kinds of variations on how to work that can totally be game changing. So you may have always learned stick to one thing and then move to the next and move to the next. And yes, that works for some people, but sometimes you need to shift, right? And there's this wonderful book I want to recommend for Leslie Josel. I can send you that, Kamira. She's a student specialist, and she has a new book out about procrastination. And she suggested this thing called round the clock for kids like this. Put the homework around a table, right? You put the math here, the science here, the this here, and like set a 20-minute clock and do math for 25 minutes, then science for 25 minutes, take a break and get a snack, work your way around the table until all the homework's done. Crazy, not the way we would all think it has to be, but really works for some kids, So
can you spell her last name real quick?
Yep, Josel, Leslie. She is a student specialist and an ADHD coach, and her book is called How to Not Procrastinate Because It's Not Going to Go Away. It's something along those lines. It's brilliant. But that's her Josel. So you really have to think about the kid and when they do their best work. Some kids actually do their best work lying flat on a couch, not at their desk in their room. Most kids don't want to do their homework in their room, I found. Has been my experience. They're at the kitchen table or on the couch or something like that. But, sometimes just trying to force them into a model can mess things up, And the last thing I will say is it's about, in terms of the productivity question you asked, is making sure that things are broken down into appropriate tasks. When I'm working with clients, I refer to the peanut butter and jelly method. So how do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? And you would say, I take 2 pieces of bread, I put peanut butter on one side, jelly on the other side to close it, right? But actually the first step of that is take out the bread, right? And the next step is open the bag. And the next step is take out a piece of bread, etc. So sometimes we procrastinate because making the whole sandwich is too big, right? But if you just say, okay, during the middle of the school day on my free period, I'm going to take out the bread, right? And then after school, I'll put the peanut butter on. Things get done a lot faster, and those little bite-sized pieces of things don't seem so overwhelming. And so they're more likely to get slotted into those tiny spaces and at the appropriate times. So making sure and helping your kids break those things down, their homework, their projects, especially in their papers, can really help them get that done.
I like that, and really making sure they understand how many steps are involved in what they're doing. We are at the end of our time. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
was wonderful. I like the idea of remembering to think that you need to think out the box. I like the big picture. I like all the little hints that you gave that we have in our comment section, so you parents can go in there and look at the hints and see which ones will work for your family. I am going to try the paper planner idea. I have a few years worth of paper planners that I use as scrap paper because people wouldn't use them. I'm going to try them.
The key is to have one place. If you can just get them to think, that way they don't have to look too many places. So whether it's the paper planner or some to-do app or whatever, but make it one location, because that's how things don't get lost.
One location so that things don't get lost. We're going to try. Especially for those of us whose kids have been pretty organized, but now they're moving from junior high to high or elementary to middle, and things are going to get more complicated. They just don't understand that yet.
Yeah. So I was saying a little bit at a time. Teach a little, one skill at a time, and see how it goes.
So is that your big takeaway for us? The paper planner and the one skill at a time?
Well, I would say the paper planner, the regular review. The paper planner and the regular review. Yeah. And the peanut butter and jelly, breaking down the tasks. Those are your 3 takeaways.
Those are good. So if you got those 3 things, you've got the message, people. Thank you, Ann, for sharing all of this valuable information. I pledge that I am going to try with that paper planner.
I wish you luck.
That is it for today. But you can join us tomorrow when we have coffee with Jen and Sharon. I think they're going to be talking about our ideal selves versus our real selves. That would be a really good conversation. You're going to want to join that and chime in there. Bring your mug, sit down and have a conversation with Jen and Sharon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.